Hello and welcome to Inspiring Courage podcast. This is Vafa Taleban, your host for today. I have the great pleasure of having Dr. Al-Hakim with me. Haidar is a new connection of mine. We have spoken briefly, and I know already that we're very aligned. He has a beautiful story, which he's going to share with you. He's an ophthalmologist by trade and a psychoanalyst. He's also the author of several books and host of Surgical Spirit. Is that right? That's the Surgical Spirit podcast.
Yeah.
You're the host of that. And he's got many more talents, but I'm going to leave him to tell you all about himself. Thank you for joining me today, Haidar. It's a pleasure to have you.
Thank you, Vafa. Thank you so much for having me on. And many pleasures, I think, more than many skills. And I mean, I think pleasures are really important. Maybe that's something that we don't consider.
And it's one of the things we're going to talk about today, how to get more pleasure out of our lives, because, you know, life is short. We only live one life, don't we? So how are we going to make an impact in the world and also have the best life that we can have? Tell us a little bit about you, please. Tell us a little bit of your story of how you became an ophthalmologist and what you found in your career and how you've more latterly become a psychoanalyst. It's a really interesting journey.
Yeah, definitely. I think for me, I was born in Baghdad many years ago, and my dad came to the UK to finish his PhD in zoology, marine biology. So we ended up in Nottingham. And I think, you know, from our Iraqi culture, you're kind of groomed to become a doctor because that's what your parents want you to become. You know, they want their sons or daughters to be a so-called success. And being a doctor is considered a success. So I was groomed from a young age to become a doctor. And I remember, I think I was 11 at the time. My dad bought me a book on medical physiology, you know, a really complicated book. And I was thinking, you know, what the hell is this? And he even wrote out sort of in Arabic, and my Arabic was a bit sort of broken. Yes, son, you're going to become a well-known surgeon, and you're going to be helping your people in Iraq. And this is my present to you. So yeah, I mean, I was groomed from a young age to be studious and to be at the top of my class and to just study. And it became sort of more of a work rather than a pleasure. And I think pleasure for me, I didn't grow up with pleasure, so to speak. You know, it was all about work and studies and duty. And I grew up in a very traditional religious family. So it was all about duty for me. So this was it, you know? And yeah, I went to medical school in London, Barts in London. How did I become an ophthalmologist? Well, I went through medical school and I hated it. I didn't really enjoy it because my whole view about medicine was about healing and making the patient better. But medical school was all about diagnosis and treatment plans and protocols and procedures. So I was thinking, this isn't going well because, you know, I was really interested in philosophy, really interested in human history. I was interested in all kinds of ologies, and I'd read all sorts of stuff. But then, you know, when you go to medical school, it's just different protocol plans. And we didn't spend that much time with the patient. And even when we did, we had to tick the boxes and, you know, go through the usual, you know, essentially turn into a robot, a medically prescribing robot. So when I finished medical school, I was probably depressed, clinically depressed, wasn't really enjoying it. And I thought to myself, how can I get out? You know, so that was my kind of, you know, from a very young career, really. But I had a lot of faith. You know, faith was what kept me going, you know. And my faith was telling me that your purpose in life was to get fully trained as a doctor and go back home and help your people back home. Now we literally fled from our country because of the political situation. And my backstory is that the regime at the time had executed 54 members of our family in Iraq because of their religious and political stance. So we couldn't really go back. So my whole dream was about, you know, if the regime disappears, I can go back home and help my people. So that was like the whole belief system I had. Ophthalmology, I mean, to be honest with you, I hated hospital medicine and I was trying to find a way of getting out. And I was supposed to get a job in A&E, and then I got an interview in ophthalmology, and I went for the interview, and the boss happened to be from the same medical school as me in London. So we kind of hit it off, and we used that, you know, old boys network thing. And so that's how I got into ophthalmology. And, you know, it's a bit better in ophthalmology because it's kind of, it's not totally hospital medicine. You know, there is a big outside, you know, you can do a lot of stuff outside the hospital. Plus there's surgery involved as well. And I've always liked to be, you know, cut people up, I guess, you know, having quite a strong narcissistic personality. You know, I'm a bit, you know, my ego is the size of Saturn on a good day. On a bad day, it's the size of the sun. So yeah, I went in, you know, in ophthalmology, trained in London. It went really well. And I was obviously thinking about staying in the UK and everything. And then the invasion happened in 2003. And I thought, wow, this is it. You know, this is my, you know, my life's work opening up in front of me. So I went back to Iraq in 2004. I hadn't been there for nearly 30 years. And it was amazing, you know, just to see a different world, you know, different to the Western world, so to speak.
How old were you when you immigrated here?
So I was 4 at the time.
You were 4.
Yeah. So I was 4 at the time.
So didn't have a real kind of memory of what home was. Your memory was probably very much what your parents kind of narrated. Yeah.
I mean, I remember, you know, having a good time. Being in the waterfalls of northern Iraq and just eating lots and, you know, farting a lot as well, apparently, because I used to eat so much.
Thanks for sharing. I can see this is going to be a fun podcast.
Yeah, because I used to press on my tummy and I used to fart all the time. And that was my kind of, my special skill.
Your superpower.
Yeah, absolutely. Superpower.
Your superpower.
So, yeah, when I went back, it was amazing. I thought, this is it. This is definitely talking to myself. You know, this is, you know, I've got the right purpose, so to speak. So I was going back every 6 months to Iraq doing surgery.
Okay.
And then I set up a charity in 2006. Al Hassan Foundation, registered here in the UK, and I'd go over every 6 months doing surgery in southern Iraq. And then 2010, you know, I sold up to the surprise of everyone, you know, sold up here in the UK, and I bought a place in Iraq and I went over there. And then things started changing. I don't know what it was. I think I sort of realized that, you know, maybe this isn't my dream, you know, maybe this isn't what I want to do for the rest of my life, so to speak.
When you say this, do you mean ophthalmology, or do you
ophthalmology?
Mean and doing the work that you were doing in Iraq?
Yeah, in Iraq, and then sort of having, you see, you know, in the East it's different because doctors are treated like demigods. You know, they're sort of this semi-godlike figure, which has its own psychological baggage, because you as a human being know yourself that you're not a god. You have lots of flaws, and this causes a lot of friction within you. And then you always had to have your doctor hat on, you know, suited, booted, talk in a particular way. You can't let your guard down, you know, you can't have a good time, you can't joke. And I thought to myself, this is going to be difficult.
Yeah.
Yeah, you know, can I sustain this? And I was getting more and more miserable. And the other major thing is that I started losing faith as well. Whereas faith was very strong within me, you know, a religious faith, I found that I was losing that, or I was questioning it more, or I was seeing a lot more hypocrisies outside. So I couldn't really reconcile between what was going on outside and what was going on inside of me. So I had a lot of internal conflict, which just made me downright miserable. And obviously I denied everything. I was in, you know, I was in burnout, so to speak. And it was a friend of mine that sort of, you know, he came over from the UK, saw me in Iraq, and I was overweight. I'd put on about probably 30-40 pounds of weight, you know, and he was like, fuck, Haidar, you know, what's wrong with you? You're sort of fucking miserable. You used to be this, you know, enjoy it, you know, the spark in, and it's like, and I was like, yeah, I'm not happy. And, you know, there's this so-called successful person from London coming over back to Iraq, helping, and, you know, I was doing some great work. We'd set up a good hospital, and we're treating, you know, thousands of people. So on paper, it was a success.
So was that your purpose, or do you think you were fulfilling your dad's purpose? Because I remember what you said. Your dad wrote
so, you know, there was
he gave you.
So there was a grooming involved for sure. But at the end of the day, you know, we grew up in an Eastern household, and Eastern households about pleasing the mother and father. You know, that's our purpose in that Eastern household. But, you know, it's beneficial when you're a doctor and everyone's bowing their head down, and, you know, you're meeting all these important people. So that was glossing over your internal pain, so to speak. You know,
it's wearing a mask, isn't it? It's
it was easy, you know, but once you take off the mask, you know, that's when the trouble starts. And, you know, you have to take off the mask eventually. You know, you can't keep that mask on all the time. So, you know, I sort of, and this went on for about 2.5 years. So I was in Iraq for 2.5 years. And then my friend said, well, why don't you see a coach? And I was like, fuck that, I'm not seeing a coach. You know, being a sort of a surgeon and narcissistic and massive ego. So I met, you know, I had a few sessions with a really nice coach in Canada. And yeah, he just opened my eyes. You know, he changed my perspective. You know, he took off the glasses I was wearing and allowed me to use other lenses. And I realized that, you know, actually, I don't have to be here. You know, this doesn't have to be for me.
You have a choice.
I have a choice. Okay. It does mean having to kind of start from scratch again, and, you know, eating humble pie, and it may not taste nice, but at least you can think about having a life for, you know, for yourself, you know, of your own choosing. So yeah, it was a big surprise for the whole family. My parents separated. My mum lives in the UK. My dad lives in Iraq. And, you know, that was my biggest fear, is like, how do I tell my parents? That was my biggest fear.
How old were you?
I was 40. I was 40, and I was so scared. I remember the day I went to my mum, and you know, at the time I was considering totally going into coaching. So when I came back, you know, the coach at the time told me he thought I was a great coach. You know, you should consider going to coaching. So then I sort of came back. I did coaching. I did NLP. I did hypnosis. And then I found counseling really interesting. I did counseling, then psychotherapy. So during that process, I thought, right, yeah, you know, fuck medicine. I'm going to do coaching. So I remember the day I was gonna, and I was 40 at the time, and I'd been in this kind of coaching sphere for about 4 years. Um, and I went to my mum, and I said, "Mum, I don't want to be a doctor anymore. I'm going to be a coach." And she saw me that I was really serious about it, and she said, "Son, whatever you do, that's fine." And it was like, it was the most amazing.
Oh, wow.
It was the most, because she saw I was really, do you know what I mean, truthful about it. It was like, "Mum, I've reached a stage where I need to move on."
So my question to you, the conformity, you have spoken a lot about growing up in an Eastern household, wanting to conform, wanting to please. Do you think that you could have at any stage said, you know something, this isn't my path? Do you think that would have been welcomed, or do you think there would have been resistance at the time? So my question really is, do we kind of conform out of fear, or is it out of respect? And is there a different way to be, i.e., are we expecting them to, or are we kind of behaving according to the way we think that they are expecting that behavior out of us, or do they really expect that kind of behavior out of us, is my question, in a funny sort of way.
Yeah, I mean, they definitely expect that behavior, but I think for me, it was more about survival. You conform because this was the best survival mechanism at the time. So I think people do what they do, even if it means going against their inner self. It's because it's a doable survival mechanism. I mean, there were many times where I questioned everything. I mean, I questioned everything about faith and about their way of life and their way of thinking, and I did that on a
Openly.
regular basis,
Oh,
openly,
okay.
openly.
Okay.
But I was still conform enough to carry on living.
I guess that's about kind of belonging, isn't it?
Yeah,
Otherwise, you just don't belong to
you
that
sort of weigh
circle
the
anymore.
options, isn't
Yeah.
it? You weigh the options at the end of the day. You weigh the options. If
Yeah.
you feel that you're getting 51% benefit and 49%, harm, you'd go with the 51%. It's a horrible situation to be in. It's not ideal. But I don't think I was mature enough as a human being to understand that I can change this dynamic. And it
Sure.
was only after, sort of experiencing more pain than pleasure did I realize that actually, you can change this balance and this dynamic.
And then you chose to be both in the end. If I could
Yeah.
just ask you one thing. So the purpose of this podcast primarily is to inspire courage in people who are right at the start of their personal development journey. Those who think that they're really unfulfilled, they're really unhappy with the way things are, but don't believe that there's another way of being. So if you wanted to inspire courage in them, if you wanted to impart with some sort of a nugget of wisdom, what would you say? Where do you think they need to start from when they get that kind of irk, that kind of dissatisfaction brewing? Because obviously it's usually typically midlife when
Yeah.
people are in a stage of career where they've progressed so far, and they're kind of mid to top of their career ladder, therefore they've got really great financial security. And in my experience, the people I work with mostly are concerned about what we're going to do financially if we want to change our career path. And it's always sometimes, not always, sometimes it's with a view that they want to change it immediately, but they don't even know what they want to change it to. And I often kind of recommend that we work on their internal a little bit, because we don't want to take that internal chaos to the next role and to the next role and to the next role. So it's best to kind of see what the sources of dissatisfaction are in the first place. So if you wanted to kind of impart with one or two nuggets of wisdom for these people, what would it be? Where would they start from?
The the main thing is actually having a relationship with the word no.
I love that.
You know,
Mm,
I think it's such an important
mm,
concept, and it's just two letters. You know, what's your relationship with no? Because no is the most powerful word I can think of that gives you a standing in your life. So are you a person that has a good intimate relationship with the word no? And if you don't, that's the first place I would start. Because it's only through that word do we actually find ourselves and start rekindling our internal life and our internal flame and our internal heat. And I think once we see where our no boundaries are, it's not about the yes, it's all about the no's. I think, you know, that's the first thing I realized, you know, my problem is that I had a bit of an issue. I mean, I was a no person, but that was in terms of being rebellious, just for the fact that I found being rebellious got me something, but not enough. I mean, the no shouldn't be about rebellion. The no should be about self-improvement. So to develop courage, which is what it's about, and, you know, life is about being courageous. You know, that's what life is about. You know, how courageous can you be? Because life is fucking difficult. And, you know, there are people out there who've gone through so much pain and suffering and yet still have a smile on their face. And they do that not because they're naive or stupid, it's because they're courageous. So, you know, I found the whole concept around no is very beneficial. In terms
to
of
what do you recommend?
No to what doesn't work for you.
Okay.
No what doesn't serve you. No to the things that reduce your energy. No to the things that make you frown. No to the things that make you angry and upset and frustrated. And, you know, just bitter. There's lots of bitter people out there.
Resentment, because it is, you talked about that conformity. People conform and they conform and they conform and then suddenly snap because they're so resentful. And that causes that element of bitterness. I think that's what you're talking about.
So, you know, that's the first thing, you know, this whole concept around, you know, what is your relationship with that? And, you know, it's not something that, you know, that happens over an afternoon or an evening. You know, it is a constant sort of a field of work. Sometimes it expands, sometimes it contracts, sometimes you have a good relationship with it, sometimes you have a bad relationship with it, you know, and that's where all these sort of different trigger points happen and sort of different psychological dynamics happen. But, you know, having a more intimate relationship with this word, I think, would be beneficial for people in terms of improving their courageous traits. The second thing really is it's about sacrifice. At the end of the day, you have to sacrifice things. You need to choose your sacrifice. If your aim is about financial stability or financial success, that has a sacrifice. You know, if your thing is about enjoying your life, that has a sacrifice. So you need to be clear about what your sacrifices are. And I think for me, my story, I realized that this was too much of a sacrifice to continue with, you know, to continue my work in Iraq and even continue my work as an ophthalmologist, you know, using the traditional work as an ophthalmologist, because I found that it's too constrictive for me, you know, that the whole what they call allopathic way of medicine is too constricting for me, because I feel that there's a bigger scope in the I mean, it's beyond psychology, you know, it's more spirituality. And you know, the great thing about spirituality is you can't really define it, which is even better.
Brilliant. So if on the topic of, you know, purpose and spirituality, what is your purpose? If I said to you, what's your one purpose in life?
I mean, at the moment, I mean, at the moment, it's about reducing suffering. I think that's my current purpose at the moment. At one stage, it was being a male gigolo. That was a purpose for me at one stage. But, you know, that sort of disappeared very, very quickly because it meant certain sacrifices. But now I've gone, you know, a bit more sort of mainstream purpose rather than fringe.
Uh-huh.
purpose. So yeah, reducing suffering for
I
others, because
like
I
that.
find that, when I was going through my own suffering, and when I saw therapists and analysts, because I reached a very, you see, my low point didn't come when I was burnout. It was after
Mm.
I came back to the UK. It's like, right,
Mm.
great. Now I've lost my certainty. What do I do now? So I kind of got a lot worse rather than a lot better.
So I guess it's important again to highlight that, as you said earlier, it's not an overnight process, is it?
Yeah.
And sometimes
Yeah.
it gets worse before it gets better, but it's having that faith that you're on the right path, right? It's the
Yeah.
journey.
Well, I lost my faith.
It's the journey, isn't it?
Oh, I hate the journey. I really do.
Do you hate the journey? I love the journey, but then
Oh my
again, there are
God.
different perspectives. It is
Yeah.
about how you choose to kind of take on new roles, new identity almost, because
Yeah.
you become something totally different. So if I was to ask you one question, if you could say 1 to 3 things, whatever you can think of, to your younger self, what would it be? If you could go back in time and give yourself advice, what would it be?
Oh, I'll say the really cheesy thing: love yourself.
Love yourself. I love that. What
Yeah,
else?
yeah. Listen to yourself, as
Listen
in,
to yourself.
listen to your guts. If it doesn't feel right, just fucking stop it. And yeah, swear a lot more. I think I didn't swear enough when I was young. I'm
Just
sort of catching
let
up
it
now.
out.
Yeah,
Let it out.
yeah.
I
And
got
be a
that.
troublemaker. I think for me, I think if I was a troublemaker, as in, cause a bit of tension and
Challenge a
yeah,
little
just
bit more.
rather than just because I was such a good boy in school. And I thought to myself, if I was a bit more of a troublemaker, it would have been much more fun. I don't know, but if I was 16, I say, Haidar, yeah, go and cause some trouble. Have a bit of fun. Enjoy yourself. Don't conform so much.
Yes.
So yeah, maybe
Yeah.
there's some wisdom in that. I don't know. But
It's to live your childhood in a way,
yeah,
right?
definitely.
I got an awful lot of what you said during the conversation, in that you were quite intuitive actually, but you didn't listen to your intuition,
No,
did you? You ignored it. I heard that throughout the conversations that you had. And also just to be more free, just there's more to life than conformity, there's more to life than wanting to please and be good. So I love what you said,
and
have
unfortunately
a better relationship with no.
Yeah, and unfortunately, I'd say 95% of doctors work within this conformity.
I understand. I think it takes a special kind of person to become a doctor anyway, and I think you need to kind of fit within these rules, if you like, these boundaries to succeed, because it's not an easy process becoming a doctor, is it? It's quite gruesome actually. So you do need to have a certain personality to conform, I guess. So
yeah, I mean, I think personality is sort of very spectrum like, and you're sort of forced towards one kind of spectrum, but your natural spectrum, or your spectrum you're more likely to be yourself in, is maybe totally different.
Sure.
So I mean, I'm sort of realizing that the spectrum is quite fluid, and I find that when I go to work, I know this is what's expected of me, and I can work within that spectrum and not get burnt out, because I know this isn't who I am, and I've reached the ability to actually dissociate myself. And I don't think that's a bad thing.
That's a great amount of self-awareness to have, actually, to know that what motivates you, what drives you, and know that for the purposes of this particular task, I have to operate out of my least preferred state, if you like.
I mean, I don't call it a vocation. I don't call it a vocation anymore. It is literally a job. Even if I'm cutting an eye, or talking about difficult situations about health with the patient, I still know that this is a job, and I can dissociate myself. Whereas before, I would be part and parcel of this whole traumatic experience because I considered it a part of me, an intrinsic part of me. And I think once I realized that actually is not an intrinsic part of you. It's just another personality trait. It's just another persona, you know, from a psychoanalytical point of view. This is
Sure.
just another persona, another mask
Sure.
that you're wearing. And if you can take it off and still enjoy your life, I think that's, you know, that's a great place to be in.
Precisely, precisely. If you wanted to leave us with a quote today, a favorite quote of yours, what would it be?
Favorite quote. It has to have the word fuck in it, of course. Favorite quote. Yeah, something like fuck 'em. Fuck 'em.
Okay. Just do what you want to do. Be
fuck 'em.
yourself. Be your true self.
Yeah,
right?
absolutely. Time to fuck off. Yeah, something like that.
As you said, love yourself as you are.
Yeah.
Yeah. I
think it's the green that's bringing out the...
I know. We're very color coordinated today.
You know, the Hulk in me.
I know,
you know,
I know. Yes, I can see that you're, you know, you're wearing a power, aren't you, in green?
Yeah, the Hulk.
You're being yourself, and that's all we can ask for, really. For people to be themselves. No masks. It's far too tiring, far too kind of exhausting to wear masks constantly, and that's something we've talked about before. So it's best to just bring your whole self to all events if you can, and live from a place of ease. So thank you so much for being a guest today. I could speak to you forever because you have such a beautiful story, and I want to hear more for sure, but perhaps we'll bring you back again. So tell people where they can find you, please, if you don't mind.
Yeah, I'm on LinkedIn, Haidar Al-Hakim. I got my book here.
Let's have a look at your book.
There we go. Oh, it's not. There we go. Physician on Fire. It's on Amazon.
Perfect.
And also my podcast, Surgical Spirit podcast. It's been around for 2 years now, 2.5 years. And
it's very easygoing, and it's lovely. And
yeah, we'll have you on the podcast
episodes
as well.
It'd be lovely.
We'll have you on the
To
podcast.
be there. Yeah, because it's very easygoing and just chatting and telling stories, which is my favorite kind of thing.
Definitely.
Perfect.
Thank you, Vafa, for having me on.
Thank you for being me. No, not at all. Thank you. It's my pleasure to have you, and thank you for being here with us, and good luck in the future.
Thank you, Vafa.